I bought this album like early on in my Rush fandom.
This is where it starts to get really poetic, I think.
Because there was some question if they were going to survive.
So that was going on in Canada, and then in the US.
Enough of me talking about this.
You want to dive into the lyrics now?
Yes, please.
He's still naive enough to believe that the priests are going to be excited.
Behind it is freedom.
You're left at the end wondering, so what good was it?
Maybe it's possible that this is a happy ending.
And a toy that helped destroy the elder race of man. The imagery of standing atop a spiral stair, he's risen to some sort of status or awareness or enlightenment. Art always speaks to the time and because of the time. He was just a naturally talented lyricist.
Hey, if you're a fan of Rush, I think you're going to love the video that we have for you here today. So this is Laurice Williamson. I've invited her to come be on the show today. I'm so excited about this because what we're going to do is we're going to actually do kind of a deep dive into the lyrics of 2112, which is obviously one of the greatest Rush albums, you know, that they ever put out. I mean, I for me, when I bought this album like early on in my Rush fandom, you know, just because I'd heard like the intro to the thing and it was just so amazing. So anyway, Laurice, who are you?
I'm a musician. I sing and I play the piano in a rock band, and also I teach English, and I'm getting my master's in English. And so in the process of getting my master's, I've done a lot of poetry analysis, and I teach a class on American literature and lyrics, and I have teenagers analyze their favorite lyrics to decide if they're poetry or not, because clearly some lyrics, they're nice to the beat and the song, but if you take the music away, there's nothing really there. So it was interesting when I dove into these. I didn't know what I was going to find because I knew the story, like the narrative that the lyrics tell, but as far as whether I could consider it poetry or not, I just kind of went into it with an open mind, and it's been super fun. Like, I nerded out on it.
Rush is known for having kind of, what's the right word, cerebral lyrics. Mm-hmm. I mean, because Neil Peart, the drummer, is the one that wrote all the words. And Rush fans, you know, they look to that like with a great deal of almost reverence towards him, because he was this really thoughtful lyricist. And this one, you know, it has reference back to Anthem. And it's kind of funny because, you know, as kids, when we'd hear this stuff and we'd hear, you know, we hadn't necessarily heard the name Ayn Rand at all, you know, and then here we are, kids listening to hard rock, heavy metal, and then we're getting this weird education in the process. Yeah. A lot of people dismiss his lyrics, I know, but Rush fans really love what he did with all this stuff. And this album, of course, is what really put them on the map too, because there was some question if they were going to survive. And then they put this album out, and this is the one that just all of a sudden they're on the map, and the record companies quit questioning them after this record. Which is
interesting because this album, they were told, like, you need to write more radio-friendly stuff, and they kind of went, F you. I mean, clearly the Overture isn't radio-friendly.
No.
So it was mostly promoted by word of mouth, I think.
Yeah.
But it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, it's all instrumental, and it's amazing that they could do that, create instrumental songs that a kid like me could just sit and just enjoy, because that doesn't happen a lot. No. You know, where you can create something so powerful that you don't need words to it. I mean, it does have words, and the meek shall inherit the earth right at the end, but you know, it was, anyway, just so amazing. And then of course, when it moves into the next movement. Okay, so enough of me talking about this. Let's dive into this whole thing. We've got the 2112, which is basically side A of the album.
Yeah. So most people know like the story, the narrative that the songs tell. So I'm not going to go into that a whole lot, but I do think it's important when you're analyzing any literature, especially lyrics and poetry. I think you need to know a little bit about the poet, the lyricist, and then the background of the time period it was written, because you can get a lot of insight that you wouldn't otherwise. So I think it's important to talk about a little bit like what was going on in Canada and the US just before this was released. And this was released in 1976. So in Canada, it came at the heels of the October what was it called? The October Crisis of 1970, in which the FLQ, that was like a group of socialist, like activists. They wanted Quebec to become socialist. And so they kidnapped the labor minister and a British diplomat and actually killed one of them. And so Trudeau implemented the War Measures Act for the first time outside of an actual war. And so what it did was it inhibited a lot of civil liberties, and police had a lot of enhanced power, and like 497 people were detained. So the populace was afraid of their liberty being taken away because of what had to happen to like keep security, I suppose. So that was going on in Canada. And then in the US, similarly, Vietnam War protests, the Vietnam War had just ended, and then Watergate. So there was this disillusionment with government. So the theme of the whole album is very relevant to society at this time, I think. So that might have had something to do with the success.
I'm actually really glad you said that, because one of the things we do on this channel a lot is we go back and we look at the time period when we'll pull out old magazines and newspapers and things, because those things are so relevant. I mean, when you take into consideration the impact that Vietnam was having. See, I barely remember anything about it because I was born. By the time I was even paying attention to anything in the world, it was ending.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember how relevant that was to society. And yet for them, this was everywhere all the time. This was a big, big deal. And I mean, we've talked about Black Sabbath on here many times, how so many of the dark lyrics that they had were a direct result of this constant war that everybody was hearing about all the time over in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And then, then you start fast forwarding past that, and you start looking into Cambodia and the stuff that happened there. And it's just it was such an ugly, ugly time. And of course that's going to impact how these artists are communicating what they're writing about.
Yes. Art always speaks to the time and because of the time, so it is relevant. So yeah, it's considered a rock metal suite, which a suite is a series of independent songs that are meant to be played in succession because they go in that order. I almost consider it more of a rock opera. Technically, it can't be called an opera because there is some spoken interludes and then the written interludes in the album, but without the interludes, you still have a story, and I think it could be considered a rock opera. But regardless, the lyrics are very poetic. I actually looked up, did Neil Peart have, a poetic background? Did he study poetry? And he really didn't. He was just a naturally talented lyricist. So that made it even more interesting to me. So the title and the theme, 1812 Overture, it's kind of a nod to Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, which was written in commemoration of Russia's defeat over Napoleon's army when they invaded the French. So the French invaded Russia, sorry. So that has become a symbol of liberty. It's played at fireworks shows all the time. And there's this little musical motif and the cannon fire from Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture that they use in their overture. And I actually have a little video of that I found on YouTube, that you hear Tchaikovsky's version and then Rush's version.
Oh, cool. Send me a link to it and we'll put it down in the first comment and put it down in the notes. Yeah,
cool. And then this is pretty widely known as well, but Neil Peart, he attributes this to dystopian literature, the theme of the narrative, Orwell's 1984, but mostly Ayn Rand's Anthem. And so people are pretty aware of what that book was about, but it basically promoted laissez-faire capitalism and like objectivism, which she is a philosophy, it's a philosophy that she kind of gave birth to, which is that there's this objective truth of the universe, and it's independent of everyone else's perspective of it, because everyone's perspective of certain things is obviously different because of our experience, our culture, etc. But she proposed that there was an independent truth that could be knowable and found if you used reason and objectivism. However, most of us are so culturally inculcated or maybe religiously indoctrinated that it inhibits that. It inhibits us from finding it until we really have a reason. So that theme is really important, I think, and you can get into some deep philosophical discussions about all of that, especially in context of how this narrative of the album ends with the protagonist committing suicide after his eyes are opened. So we've gone over the background. You want to dive into the lyrics now?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it starts with some liner notes that are a little interlude, like a narrative. So I'll just read it. As I lay awake staring out at the bleakness of Megadon, city and sky become one, merging into a single plane, a vast sea of unbroken gray. So I think that can be a metaphor right there from the get-go for totalitarianism, like the vast sea of unbroken gray and everything merging, because totalitarianism is about everybody's equal and the same and needs are met, but we don't have anyone excelling. We don't have, everyone's average, right? But needs are met. And then it goes on. I used to think I had a pretty good life here, just plugging into my machine for the day, then watching Temple Vision or reading a Temple paper in the evening. So it's established that he has to plug into the machine, which kind of gives you this image of everyone has their job, everyone has their duty, and everything's kind of running smoothly. And at the time, he thinks it's a pretty good life. He doesn't know anything else.
Because he doesn't know anything different.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way these things, that's the way this stuff always happens, is when you don't understand how things could be,
right?
Then everything
you're content.
Then you're fine. Yeah, that's great.
So the imagery clearly paints a picture of someone, as you've said, whose needs are met, and he's been programmed to believe that's just the way life is. But his eyes are like, he's becoming awakened. His eyes are being opened to the fact that things could be different. He says, I believed what I was told. I thought it was a good life. I thought I was happy. Then I found something that changed it all. So in context of temples and priests, and then the overture, one spoken line on the meek shall inherit the earth, you kind of get the feeling from the get-go that this might be about religious indoctrination and religious authority kind of suppressing people. However, as it goes on, you kind of get the idea that it's more about government. And I don't know, I've contemplated that, and I think government and religion are pretty inextricably connected in a lot of cultures, because the Bible and other religious contexts have always, not always, but in a lot of instances have contributed to like various political stances, even justification for violence or wars or suppression.
Well, I think
of people.
you make a great point, because one of the things you notice when you have with religion and government is as religion diminishes, government power increases. They kind of have this thing that, I mean, you look back at so many of the most powerful governments in history, the king was often seen as the center of religion.
Yeah, the religious leader.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're like in some ways the same thing. I mean, even in Western civilization, go back to England. I mean, even King Henry thought he could just take over create a whole new church in the process, break away from the Catholic Church because he didn't like what was going on. And then he became kind of the leader of religion then. And so it is pretty interesting. And there's an interest, and what's really important here too, that I think plays into the story, is this idea of the more powerful, the bigger the government, the smaller the person.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And it's this inverse relationship. And when you look at this story, it just totally shows that. You have this person who is just very, very small because he is because his whole life is controlled by this government. And so you watch that. The more power you give to a central authority, the less power you have.
Exactly.
And this story has taken that to ultimately like an extreme.
Mm-hmm. To show like what that actually does to individuals and how it could be otherwise. So I kind of already touched on the overture, but it's musical, and the one spoken line, which is a Bible allusion from Sermon on the Mount. Okay, so then the second track is the Temple of Syrinx. The interlude, which is, I think, only written in the liner notes in the album, but it says, "The massive gray walls of the temples rise from the heart of every Federation city. I have always been awed by them, to think that every single facet of every life is regulated and directed from within. Our books, our music, our work and play are all looked after by the benevolent wisdom of the priests." Again, we have gray, and anytime a lyricist or a poet uses a symbol more than once, you kind of need to look at that and go, there must be a purpose here, so what is it? Gray is pretty commonly equated with something dismal, something not black, not white, so like hard to decipher or maybe mediocre. I think in this case, it does portray something dismal about to come, and then maybe insinuating that the Federation is also not black or white, because it's a gray area where people's needs are met, right? There's no one starving, there's no one homeless, but not everyone can self-actualize. They don't know that, and maybe as long as they're in the gray area, like kind of kept in the dark a little bit, it's not a bad thing, right?
Right. Again, because they don't know any different.
Exactly. At this point, the priests are considered benevolent and wise, which is interesting. The fact that the speaker has always been awed by them suggests he's willingly accepting his place beneath them, like you mentioned, and his status beneath those in control. The first verse of the actual song. So it describes a totalitarian society, or maybe even a high demand religion. People can decipher that as they will, I suppose, where everything's taken care of, even the questions. I thought that was very important. So you never need to wonder how or why. Like, we have all the answers.
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've taken care of everything. The words you read, the songs you sing, the pictures that bring pleasure to your eyes.
Yes.
Oh God, I can't. I probably, if I would have not stopped, I probably could have kept going. Anyway, because I've sang it in my head so many times. But that is fascinating. I remember hearing that. Never need to wonder how or why, and because we are, these benevolent. You don't. Whatever you do, don't think for yourself.
Right. Don't question. We have all the answers.
Everything's covered, and we got it. And it's such an interesting thing, because when you're born into something, you just go with it. Because you don't know.
It. Right.
It's a little bit like we were talking about earlier with Vietnam. Born into a world that doesn't have Vietnam going, you don't comprehend a world with it. You've heard of it, but it's hard to get your head around living that in that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, it's pretty fascinating here. So he's born into this world. The song, like you said, from the very first line, we've taken care of everything.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's great.
And you only know what you know.
Yes.
So then it goes on to talk about the great computers fill the hallowed halls. And so it invokes like this big room or control room type of thing. The gifts of life are held within our walls, suggesting that the priests have the keys to the good life and they are keeping them to give at their discretion. So I think that's very much a metaphor for authority. They're going to dole out what they feel you need, but they keep it. It's theirs. The next verse says, equality, our stock in trade. So our stock in trade is like the usual part of someone's work. So it's saying equality is what we're looking for here. Everyone is equal, but everyone is also average. And equality sounds great, right? Like, we talk about it all the time. We need equality. Minorities need equality. Women need equality. But that's how socialism and totalitarianism are purported as beneficial. Equality.
But then the part that gets left out of this a lot of times is you're all equally poor.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the situation here.
Exactly.
Hey, everybody's equal. It sounds wonderful. And they don't know any different. Mm-hmm. So they're like, okay, this is life. But the reality of it is everybody's equally oppressed. Everybody's equally poor. And as a result, you never even really experience what could be seen as like ambition and joy and purpose and all these other things that are really, really important to the human experience.
And not even just important to the individual who's experiencing like self-actualization, but the gifts that they give to everyone around them as they develop their talents and gifts. All of that's squelched. So, yeah. Oh, Brotherhood of Man. It's capitalized in this song, which I thought was interesting so it's not just humanity in general. It's like the club, the Brotherhood of Man. It becomes a proper noun. So the priests are trying to convince the populace that they need to be part of this club and, be beneath them to be part of it. Also, we're introduced to the red star, the banner with the red star on it here. And that historically has been associated with communist regimes, specifically the Russian Red Army. And then near the middle of the song, it says within these walls, and then at the end that becomes within our walls. So it's like, these are our walls, and now they can be yours too, as long as you do what we want.
Interesting.
You can be part of something bigger now because you're part of us. So it's how they're trying to sell the totalitarianism to the populace, which I thought was interesting. Okay, so discoveries, number 3, and I'm going to read the interlude here. Behind my beloved waterfall in the little room that was hidden beneath the cave, I found it. I brushed away the dust of the years and picked it up, holding it reverently in my hands. I had no idea what it might be, but it was beautiful. So this clearly is the protagonist finding the guitar, and it's obviously literal. It's part of the narrative, the story, but metaphorically, I think the guitar can be definitely representative of individuality and creativity. Or maybe even breaking free from indoctrination, right? He's suddenly seeing something that he's never seen before, and things start to change.
And it's interesting that that's the metaphor that they use because they're a rock band.
Exactly.
They're going to use the guitar as the metaphor for breaking free, for discovery, for individuality. And I remember the first time I heard that song, and you hear him kind of plucking the strings, and I remember listening to it because they have little sound effects in there, so you can kind of hear him going through this experience of finding it.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to just this little bit of hearing him pluck some strings and going through it. And I remember going, wow, this is the coolest thing. Because you're like living it and thinking about that moment of what would it be like living in a world where you didn't understand this, you stumble across this thing.
You've never even seen that or known about it, and
what is this?
And you just start playing with it. It's cool.
Yeah. I remember like I said, I remember being in my bedroom and playing that thing and going, whoa. Anyway, just the experience of hearing that for the first time was just awesome.
Yeah,
it's great.
And then the other thing that I think can be taken metaphorically is the waterfall. So a waterfall can be symbolic of like the flow of nature and how things evolve and change naturally, or it could be a cleansing and a renewal, which is relevant in the storyline. But also it's important that the waterfall is what veiled this gift. So to find the guitar, which metaphorically speaking is creativity, I guess, he had to break through some sort of veil. I think the veil of cultural inculcation, I guess. And so this is like he's broken through the veil. He finds this gift of creativity. And now like this transformation or cleansing is going to happen, which I think the waterfall is a perfect metaphor for all of that.
Wow, I'd never thought of that. The waterfall being some sort of a veil to break through, to go through, because it's kind of transparent.
Yeah.
You can move through it, and yeah, but it hides what's behind it, and
right.
And behind it is freedom.
Yeah.
And
whole life.
Individuality and privacy, all that. That's great. That's interesting.
Let's see. So for the first time, he's learning for himself about, and this is a quote, laying fingers across the wires and producing harmonious sounds. I can't wait to tell the priests about it. So he's still naive enough to believe that the priests are going to be excited as he is about this new thing that he's found. And then the first verse, it's pretty literal and just is the narrative, but it's all about discovery and the glimpse of thinking outside of this box, like the box, an existential box, I suppose. And then the second verse, it's interesting here. This is where it starts to get really poetic, I think. There are a lot of literary devices which Peart employs. It says, see how it sings like a sad heart. So if you know about poetry at all, there's a lot of alliteration right from the get-go of the letter S. and joyously screams out its pain. And so you have the alliteration of S and also this juxtaposition between sings and sadness and joyous and screaming. And I thought that was super fascinating. Like, sings and sadness shouldn't go together and joyous and screaming shouldn't go together. So why are they put together? But I think this is where it starts to get really deeply nuanced and interesting, because you start to see that having everything taken care of but dictated actually creates this pain that can't even be expressed. Like, no one knows how to express or like why they're feeling pain or if they should feel pain, if that makes sense. And so sadness and then the ability to express it creates a joyous scream. Like, I kind of think of it as like, if you're grieving, being able to like express the grief is somewhat joyous, even though it's awful.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think it's also a metaphor for an existential crisis where if you've ever left a deeply ingrained belief, whether it be religious or political or like something that you grew up believing because of your family, and I have experienced that. Like, I completely changed so many of my views in my late 40s, and it was terrifying. Like, it was freedom. Like, I saw the world differently, and I felt like I had this new insight and I was enlightened in a certain way, but also it was terrifying because like my worldview was pulled out from under me. And I think that's what this song is about. Like, discovery is all of that. It's joy and happiness and, oh my gosh, this whole world is opening up to the protagonist, but also it becomes terrifying.
Great fear.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the last stanza of Discovery ends with, I can't wait to share this new wonder. The people will all see its light. Let them all make their own music. The priests praise my name on this night. The diction here is very poetic. We have a lot of consonants of the W sound, and consonants, it's like alliteration where you repeat the same consonant sound, but instead of being just at the beginning, as with alliteration, consonants can be the middle of the word, the end of the word, etc., but a lot of the same consonant sounds. And people can make of it what they will, but like psychologically, a lot of artists have come to the conclusion that certain consonant sounds evoke certain emotions, which I find fascinating. So the consonants here, I think it just makes it like the poet or the lyricist wants you to look at these words or like linger on them a little longer and maybe think about the meaning a little longer. That's usually what consonants does. It just invites you to stay and go, why do those all sound the same? Let me think about that a little longer than I would just read it, if that makes sense. But it's a very good poetic technique. Okay, what was I going to say?
Yeah, I remember when the line, the priest praised my name on this. For some reason, I remember hearing that. And what a big deal that is in the story, because the guy has his hopes up. Like he can't imagine somebody not being as excited about this as he is. And he's like, oh my gosh, they have no idea how great this is. Yeah. I can't wait to do this. I remember listening to that, and you could almost feel a little bit of, and it's funny when you hear it, you kind of know what's coming.
Yeah, but you're still like the anticipation of excitement. Yeah. And it's also interesting because the character is excited to like show the populace this, not because it's like, oh, I found this cool thing and I can play music now. He wanted to let them experience the creativity and like creating their own music, and it's equated to light, which goodness or enlightenment, I guess. However, that last line, the priest praised my name on this night, could kind of show you that human nature is like, even if you find something that you think is going to help everyone, human nature tends to be like, I'm going to be power hungry and get some glory from this too.
I'm going to be important.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's actually a really interesting thing, because the setup of this is that everybody's equal.
Yeah.
And to have somebody have that natural tendency to want to kind of put their head up, to break, to kind of stand out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's part of human nature.
Exactly.
To go there. That's interesting.
Okay, and then we'll move on to presentation number 4. The interlude here also has a whole bunch of consonants of the S sound specifically, and the S sound repeated a lot is actually given its own name. It's called sibilance. because it tends to either create like a lulling, calming sound, like think of someone going to sleep and it's like, or a creepy, like almost daunting sound, think of a snake or like some evil entity, like. And so depending on the context, you can presume what the author was trying to do with the sibilance. So I'm going to read it. In the sudden silence, as I finished playing, I looked up to a circle of grim, expressionless faces. Father Brown rose to his feet, and his somnolent voice echoed throughout the silent temple hall. Instead of the grateful joy that I expected, they were words of quiet rejection. Instead of praise, sullen dismissal. I watched in shock and horror as Father Brown ground my precious instrument to splinters beneath his feet. So, I mean, you can show this later, but all of those S sounds are very significant. And clearly, within context, in this case, the S's, it's like this subliminal, subtle hissing sound, which creates like unease or danger. And then the title, I think, is important too. Presentation, clearly, he's presenting this musical gift to everyone in the priests. And then also, there's a presentation of the priests showing their true colors. So I think that's a little bit ambiguous. Yeah. The first verse of the song is in common ballad form. If you know anything about meter, you have iambic tetrameter, so 4 iambs, followed by iambic trimeter, which is 3 iambs. And I actually have a little chart of the
Okay, cool. We'll put that on the screen.
Syllables and the stressed and unstressed syllables, which is fascinating if you're into that. If you're into lyrics, it's kind of cool.
So explain, what are we looking at then?
So an iamb is 2 syllables, unstressed, stressed. That's 1 iamb. And
now, what do you mean by that?
So let me read. Let's see. I need to find the lyrics. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Whoops. So if you hear like a verse or a line of poetry that's like da-dum, 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 it's the unstressed and then stressed syllable is an iamb. Okay. And poets reverse that too, where you can have stressed, unstressed, da-da, da-da, da-da. And it's been like, it's mapped out. If you study poetry, we always map out the meter because that usually means something. Like the poet is deliberately doing that for a reason. And so in this case, being common ballad meter, it creates a sing-songy feel, like a comfortable sort of, think nursery rhyme, like easy to remember, which definitely is appropriate for the protagonist. Like he's happy at this point and like found this amazing thing that he's trying to present. And then we have the priests also singing. And interestingly, common ballad meter can also be haunting or chant-like. Like, I don't know, think of ancient chants that are kind of creepy, which is very appropriate for the priests. So I thought that was pretty intelligent and fascinating that would be chosen for this song. Because even though it's the same meter for the whole song, it can represent the young protagonist excited about this new thing and the daunting priests like shutting it all down. Let's see. So the lyrics are pretty straightforward. He's just calling this musical instrument like a miracle as strong as life. That's pretty big. He thinks it's a miracle as strong as life. And the priests are like, they call it a waste of time and ancient ways and a toy that helped destroy the elder race of man. It doesn't fit the plan. And the boy is baffled that they rejected what he thinks is beautiful and amazing. So the priests end with maybe the most interesting line of this song. Just think about the average. What use have they for you? So they don't want anyone becoming more than average. And they're kind of insinuating everyone else that they're not going to like this. If you have this talent that they don't, right, this isn't good for anyone. So it just kind of doubles down on this. Like, we want everyone to be the same and nobody can excel at anything. The whole purpose is that everyone's average. Okay, number 5, Oracle, the Dream. So the interlude has assonance again of the E sound. I didn't cover assonance. So assonance is the same as consonance, only with vowel sounds. Okay. So we have repeated E a lot in this. And then we have 3 sharp alliteration of S. And I mapped it out, and the viewers can look at it and it might make more sense. But I guess it was a dream, but even now it all seems so vivid to me. Clearly, yet I see the beckoning hand of the oracle as he stood at the summit of the staircase. So we have dream, seems, me, clearly see, ing, he, and then stood, summit, staircase. And that's purposeful, and it highlights, like the E sound is, it's like elevating and almost anticipatory, but then you have stood at the summit of the staircase, which kind of shuts it down. It's like intense and sharp to end all that, which definitely is kind of a diagram of what's happening here. The second part highlights the protagonist's eyes continuing to be opened as he discovers the ruins of ancient cities and how the spirit of man used to be so alive and creative, and it had all been squelched in this society that he lives in now. And so now he is aware of this loss of individual creativity and how it kind of has made life meaningless. So he goes from being excited, and then this oracle in the song Oracle in the Dream, he goes on this adventure to see how humanity used to be, and it becomes depressing because he realizes he can't escape.
Yeah, exactly.
So that first
that
line.
It's seeing what could be, and then knowing that you can't ever possibly get it.
Exactly.
That they're going to stop it, they're going to prevent it. Having your dreams dashed the way that he did.
Yep.
I mean, just the extreme emotions that would happen in a moment like that, especially in a society where there probably weren't a lot of extreme emotions being felt. What do you do with that at that point? I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I'm just imagining in a world of gray where everybody's the same, everything's equal, you don't think for yourself, and then all of a sudden to feel excitement, to go through this experience, and then experience rejection, and then none of this makes sense. And then anyway, so I get a little sense of what would be going on emotionally with somebody like that.
Yeah, you have like these extreme highs and then it's shut down and then an extreme low. Which is what the poetic devices here are actually articulating in addition to the words. So then we come a little bit further along in the song. We have consonants of S again, sibilance, and the alliteration of W. So the alliteration of W is purposeful if you think of it as like W, wow. It's to create a sense of wonder and overwhelm, like wow. So we have, I'll read this again. I see still the incredible beauty of the sculptured cities and the pure spirit of man revealed in the lives and works of this world. I was overwhelmed by both wonder and understanding as I saw a completely different way to life, a way that had been crushed by the Federation long ago. I saw now how meaningless life had become with the loss of these things. So, the wow, the wonder and overwhelm. Interestingly, the alliteration of W, which is supposed to portray wonder and overwhelm, those words, wonder and overwhelm, are used in that section. So it even is like doubly relevant. Okay, then we have repetition of a few words. If a writer uses redundancy, which they usually try to avoid. If they use words more than once, you need to look at that and go, why did they use that word more than once? And light, hands, and grows are repeated in the song. So what do we get from that? Probably just the themes of awareness, creativity, and growth, like creation with your hands and growing in light. The dream is personified in the first stanza. It's capitalized. So again, it's kind of like brotherhood of man. Capitalized becomes a proper noun. Dream becomes a proper noun here. So it kind of gives you the sense that the protagonist wants more than his dream, the actual dream. He needs like an entity to guide him at this point. And the first stanzas, again, are obviously just narrative, telling more of the story, but it can also be continued metaphor for returning to your own wisdom, and which goes back to Rand's philosophy of objectivism. And so he's escaping the brainwashing of groupthink at this point. And we have silent streets, which is alliterated, and it depicts no one telling him where to go. He's alone on the journey. And fitful sleep, which we have like the cognitive dissonance hitting him. It's fitful. And he's still not sure what to do with all of it at this point.
Right.
The imagery of standing atop a spiral stair I thought was interesting because you have this image of like growth. He's risen to some sort of status or awareness or enlightenment. But you also have this possible danger of a fall off the spiral stairs. And then an oracle, which is better than the personified dream, leads him light years away to see like this whole universe of things he's never even imagined. So you have the juxtaposition of astral nights and galactic days, which I thought was fun. Usually when someone uses juxtaposition, it's to give more weight to one or the other, like white looks more white against black.
Yes.
However, in this case, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's contrasting astral nights and galactic days. It could be, like maybe he's contrasting the nights or this totalitarian society, and days is the enlightenment of discovering there's something better. But I also think it just compounds the imagery of the vastness of the universe, like how wondrous it is, all the stuff he's discovering. And then the third verse, there's assonance again, which amplifies the effect of creativity and awareness. And the word gifted is used, which is interesting. You find out that talent is something foreign to the protagonist as he's discovering what it means. Okay, and then in soliloquy, number 6, the waterfall returns. So we can go back to like the imagery of the waterfall in discovery. So the metaphor of cleansing and growth and rebirth is brought back in. And this time the waterfall is comforting music to the protagonist, and it seems to be his only companion at this point, and he contemplates death because he thinks death is going to allow him to live in this realm that the oracle took him and showed him. It's like the only way he can imagine to get there is death, because he's sure the Federation is not going to allow it. That's
an interesting, before we go on, that's an interesting idea, because you look at a show, for example, like Logan's Run, which is also a dystopian futuristic show. They were under this belief that they would go at a certain time in their life, the thing would start blinking in their palm, and then they'd have to go to carousel to give up their life, believing that they were going off to some great reward that was going to be handed to them. That was part of that. They would sell it on these people, and it makes you. I guess they don't bring it up elsewhere in the story, but it makes you wonder if that was part of the. I'm reading between the lines here, but part of that culture, like it would be in some of these things. Like there's, what was the other one? What's the one? Soylent Green. Now they didn't think of it as after this life. Maybe they did, but in order to have those moments of beauty, you had to forfeit your life. Mm-hmm. And so there's an interesting theme in these dystopian stories, that there's this beautiful place that's out of their normal life, and all they have to do
self-sacrifice
is exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's interesting.
Where was I? Oh, so the first verse in soliloquy, it utilizes a combination of anaphora, which anaphora is repeated first lines of within a stanza, and parallelism can be repeated, or it can be like, let me give you an example. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That's parallelism.
Right.
It just kind of turns it on itself. So the sleep is still in my eyes, the dream is still in my head. I would call that a combination of anaphora and parallelism. And that's usually used for emotional intensity. It's like, let me tell you this, and let me tell you a little different way, so you really get it. And we also have the assonance of I, and I being a diphthong, I-E, it creates a dreamy and emotional feel. And E, as I mentioned before, is like relief or elevation. So combination of all these things, and I'll let you show it to the listeners, but the sleep is still in my eyes, the dream is still in my head, I heave a sigh and sadly smile, and lie a while in bed. Yeah, we have sibilance again, we have assonance of I and E, and all of that is very intentional, I believe, to create specific emotional depth. So you have more than just the words, you also have all these sounds helping you create the feeling that he wanted to create.
Let me hit this record again. I just turned off. Okay, sorry.
So at this point, the protagonist is consumed by despair because he's seen what could be and knows he's never going to get it. And so he succumbs and kills himself, which is tragic. And so you're left at the end wondering, so what good was it? Is ignorance bliss, Is death better than dominance? Or it leaves it open to this philosophical contemplation. And it ends ambiguously in several ways, which continues with the grand finale, which is 2 lines repeated 3 times. Attention all planets of the Solar Federation, and we have assumed control. It's deliberately ambiguous, which most poets do that. Like they want it to be more applicable to more people over a broad range of time and experiences, so they make it ambiguous. It's way more fun that way than to be super literal. So you can assume one of 2 things. There may be more possibilities than I'm looking at, but it could mean that the elder race is coming to rescue people from the Federation, like they have assumed control. Or it could be, and that would actually amplify the tragedy of the death of the protagonist, right? Yeah. Or it could mean that the Federation has finally gained complete control because their one opposition is now dead. So
it's funny because I've thought about that over the years because my initial thought is that there'd been a rebellion, but they'd taken control back, And then there's this other part of me. I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe it's possible that this is a happy ending.
Yeah.
Where all this stuff that happened before, it's like, okay, now we're back. We finally were able to assume control again. So, but as you said, it's who knows?
Yeah.
Do with it whatever you want to. So, yeah, it's I remember hearing that with that deep voice at the end of that song back when I first heard it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Such a great story.
It is, and it's a great ending, even though it's tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's that. And then there's a whole side B and the themes of those songs.
Well, okay, so this has been awesome.
It's been fun.
Really so we're going to do another video where we pick up on side B and kind of talk about how that, even though those songs are not part of the story, the theme of the album kind of you can find it throughout some of those lyrics. And so we'll jump back. Laurice, that was awesome. That was so much fun listening to this.
I had fun doing it. It was really fun.
Because, on our channel, we have a lot of Rush fans. You know who you are. I mean, some of our Rush videos, they get tens of thousands of views. And it's crazy how many views we get on some of these things. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to love listening to that. So, hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this. Thank you, Laurice, for being here and walking us through this. This is a blast. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. Please like the video and leave your comments down below. Did you learn something? What did you think about this? I'd also like to get your feedback on just this, because we're introducing on the channel some new ideas, some new themes, and we want to do more of these lyric type of things where we dig into these. And so I really want to hear your feedback on that. And of course, if you're a Rush fan, we know we've got a lot of them. Do us a favor and share this video with other Rush fans, because more of you. So please do that.
You know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. So hey, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.